Well, just days before a federal election campaign will likely kick off, U.S. President Donald Trump has weighed in on that upcoming race.
The Liberal Party is going to win now in the next election, most likely. And they were down and out. Isn't that going to make them more hostile to us and possibly
I'd rather deal with a liberal than a
for China, closer to Canada, and that would really put us in a bind.
The conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal, actually, with a liberal. And maybe they're going to win, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me at all.
Well, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre reacted to those comments today, saying it's clear Donald Trump wants the Liberals to stay in power because they will keep Canada weak.
It's true. I'm a strong leader. I'm a tough guy to deal with. I'm firm in my convictions, and I'll always put Canada first. Mark Carney will back down, and his Liberal policies will keep Canada weak, just like Trump wants. Giving the Liberals a fourth term will only weaken our country and strengthen Donald Trump.
Now, when asked if Poilievre is tough enough to take on Donald Trump, Liberal Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne said he has his doubts.
Really? I don't know. I've seen him for 10 years. They don't look very tough to me. What we need now is seasoned, serious people at the helm of this country. And I think that's what Prime Minister Carney is bringing to that, you know.
Okay, all of this is happening as the polls continue to shift in the Liberals' favor. For the first time in nearly 3 years, the CBC poll tracker has the Liberals ahead of the Conservatives. It's a narrow lead, with the Liberals at 37.7 and the Conservatives at 37.4. The change has been significant since January 6th, the day Justin Trudeau resigned. And since that day, Liberals have gone up considerably and the Conservatives have fallen. This has also been at the expense of the NDP and the Bloc Québécois. So that leaves us with lots to talk about with the Power Panel. So let's dig in. Amanda Alvaro is a former Liberal Party communication strategist and co-host of the Beyond a Ballot podcast. James Moore is a former Conservative cabinet minister. And here with me in studio, Jordan Leichnitz is a former NDP strategist, and Sherelle Evelyn is the managing editor of the Hill Times. It's good to see you all. Let's deal with what Donald Trump had to say first. James, is that Donald Trump endorsing Mark Carney, as Pierre Poilievre says, or is that Donald Trump being pressed by a Fox News host of like, why are you helping the Liberals in Canada, trying to spin it as, this is actually really just good for me? How do you view those comments?
I mean, it's a little bit of a column A, column B, probably column C, column D. Right?
Fair.
I mean, Donald Trump does not understand anybody in the world who is a conservative who doesn't fall in line and obey him blindly around the world. He doesn't get it. And Pierre Poilievre is one of those people. So he pushes back against anybody who doesn't drink the Kool-Aid and fall in line with the Donald Trump cult. And Pierre Poilievre is not that guy. Pierre Poilievre is a free trading guy who believes in lower taxes, getting Canadian resources to world markets. And he hasn't fallen into the mega stranglehold that American conservative Republicans, most of whom have in the modern era. And I think that frustrates him. And on the other hand, you know, he says that Canadians are nasty and they were really tough to negotiate with, and he doesn't like Liberals. He said that literally yesterday. And then last night with Laura Ingraham, he says he preferred to deal with Liberals. So like getting inside of Donald Trump's head and trying to understand what he thinks on a given day, I think is a fool's errand. What matters for Canada is, I think, the contest that's in front of us about who is the most serious, substantive, and experienced person to deal with Canada, protect Canada's interests going forward. And I think Pierre Poilievre has a very strong hand to play. Mark Carney may have the resume that a lot of people are drawn to, but when it comes to the cut and thrust of politics, I think he's shown himself to be very novice at this. And I think there's a window of opportunity there for Pierre Poilievre to gain the confidence of Canadians.
Just a question, though, on the Trump impact, because it's obviously a big reason why the polls we showed there, James, have completely, flipped around and reoriented. When we were discussing Danielle Smith, I think it was last week, you talked about that constituency she has to straddle in her Alberta political base. Poilievre has to do a version of that, though not to the same degree, that there is a portion of the Conservative coalition that does like Donald Trump. What sort of a challenge does that create for him in moments like this, in terms of, going one way to defend Canada without alienating 3, 4, or 5% of the coalition that could go to Max Bernier, that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there is a cohort of Canadians who still like what Donald Trump says on culture war stuff, saying that there are two genders, being aggressive on immigration, other things, guns, social issues, etc. But that constituency of Canadians is evaporating day by day as people start losing their jobs and they start seeing Donald Trump mock the very existence of the country of Canada, talking about our prime minister being a governor, saying that Canada has no reason to exist at all as a country and we can't do it without the United States. I think the same conservatives who might have liked some of what Donald Trump was selling 6 months ago or 6 years ago, I think a lot of them get their backs pretty straightened up and they say, wait a minute, we're a proud and strong country and I'm a proud and strong Canadian and Donald Trump can get lost. I'm not interested in hearing that. So I think over time, the more that Donald Trump talks, that constituency that Pierre has to worry about is getting smaller and smaller.
So Amanda, what's your view on this, sort of the impact of whatever Trump has to say yesterday, today, tomorrow, between now and Election Day, but also just what we're seeing in the polls? I'll know James said Pierre Poilievre still has a strong hand to play, but it's not that Pierre Poilievre is definitely going to be the next prime minister, which has been the assumption for the past 2 years. I mean, where do you think this leaves the whole dynamic here right now?
Well, let's start with those comments because I think James made a good point. I mean, Trump every day, sometimes multiple times a day, makes outlandish, inaccurate, unverifiable comments. And he's prone to sometimes multiple times in the same day contradicting those exact comments. So unless you're an actual mind reader, it's impossible to know what he is doing or what he is thinking or feeling. And I don't think anyone cares to do that. I think that what actually matters is how the leaders respond to Trump. And I think Canadians are paying particular attention to that right now. So the response to this, I thought was really interesting. You have Poilievre with his kind of like breathless response that this is an indication that Trump wants to work, wants to negotiate with the Liberals because he thinks that they're weak and that he's the tough guy, believed nobody ever. And then you have Prime Minister Carney's response over the last couple of days, which has been really fascinating. And that's to treat Trump kind of like a toddler in a tantrum. And every parent will understand this, which is like, instead of appeasing it, instead of indulging it, he's sort of ignoring it. He's off to, meet with the UK and meet with France and look at opportunities to both build the Canadian economy and diversify our markets. And he says, I will speak to Trump when it's appropriate to do so. So the message he's putting out is that I'm going to speak to rational, reasonable leaders. And I think Canadians are responding to that. I think they have responded, they are responding, and the polls are showing that.
Jordan, what's your thoughts on the developments of the last 24 hours or so?
Well, I mean, Trump is a chaos machine. I think that continues to be the truth. And I think that there is a lot of truth in what both James and Amanda have said. But yeah, it was really interesting to see today that Pierre Poilievre grabbed onto those comments like a life raft, basically, and really wanted to put out just front and center so clearly these comments. But look, it's just as probable that in next week, Trump will say the opposite, and I think that Poilievre has a real challenge right now because they bet big on a very polarizing strategy, a strategy that forefronted Poilievre's abrasiveness, his populism, and a lot of the anti-establishment stuff that really, it did work when it was against Trudeau and people were feeling anger about the sort of political establishment in Canada and their sense that it wasn't working for them. But all of that now has become stylistically a little too close to Trump. And so it's now really difficult for Poilievre to peel himself away from that strategy. One, because that's part of that is who he is as a politician. Like that is genuine to his personality. But two, also they have so much brand capital invested in presenting that version of Poilievre. And this is like another reason that we're seeing them, I think, a bit scattershot in their approach and how they're trying to recalibrate their campaign. So we've seen them move from Canada First to then going back into carbon tax stuff this week. Like that's an attempt to have the campaign be fought on ground that's just far more favorable and where they've also spent millions of dollars branding themselves. But I think what we're seeing right now is that the campaign is really going to be pretty squarely focused on the question of who can manage Trump, who can manage the chaos, and whether Canadians are going to want to indulge in more chaos to get there. Probably not.
Yeah, Sherelle, I can't tell if it's smart strategy to try to force the view of Canadians back to that issue set that the Conservatives were focused on, or if it's a sunk cost fallacy that they've committed to this and they're sticking with it because they have been so committed to it. I mean, how do you view where things are and with what Trump has done in the last little while?
Yeah, it seems to me like to kind of pick up when Jordan was saying, the more Trump speaks, obviously, the angrier Canadians seem to get. but it's not the same kind of anger that the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre, especially over the last couple of years, have been, channeling or fomenting or whatever it is that you want to say, whether he's precipitating, whether he's, pushing it or whether he's just collecting it. Obviously, there was a clear target before, and that was Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau is no longer on the playing field, so the clear target now has to be Donald Trump. So they have to find a way to channel that anger in a way that isn't inwards. So you can't make Canadians feel badly about themselves and about the state of their country right now, because what they want is some sort of optimism. They want unity. They want to fight back against a common enemy. I don't yet know if Mark Carney as Prime Minister is the person to lead that charge. I don't think he's necessarily proven himself in that regard yet. It's still very early on. So while he's doing that, Pierre Poilievre is still trying to find his footing. Is this the right way forward? Can we still talk about things that we know people had some sort of issue with, like the carbon tax, even though that in itself is also now being removed from the map? So as things get slowly chipped away, what are you going to replace it with? And just saying, yes, I'm big, I'm strong, I'm, Canada first, that language is, it is very much similar to what Donald Trump has been doing. It's what he's been about. I am the person who's going to fix it. I'm going to make make America great again. So if you have to find a new path forward, how do you do it without emulating?
Yeah, look, the Canada First language, yes, it's similar to what Trump has done, but Trump didn't invent that. That was used in the past, and Laurier, I think, did the Canada.
But they didn't have red hats.
No. I understand, but it's not an uncommon, refrain for people to use throughout in politics historically. It's just an unfortunate comparison for Poilievre, right? But look, Justin Trudeau's gone. He's posted selfies of himself at Canadian Tire, stocking up his new kitchen because he's had to move out of Rideau Cottage, but because of that, the dam is broken on public opinion. I just want to bring the polling graphic back if we can. And James, I want to get you to jump in here because, for 2 years, it has been the Conservatives way out in front. And the poll tracker that Eric Grenier ably does for us has it as a margin of error sort of race right now between the Liberals and the Conservatives. But some of the more current polling, James, we've seen has the Liberals not just ahead, but in flat-out majority territory, with some of the probability, on seats being, only a 1% chance of a Conservative majority and a 55% chance of a Liberal majority. I mean, what do you make of where we are? Because, it has seemed for a while that Prime Minister Poilievre was inevitable. Today, not so much.
I mean, an absolute level reset of what the conversation is about. The ballot question was for 2 years, are you tired of Justin Trudeau? And don't forget, that had been building for a long time. Justin Trudeau lost the popular vote to Andrew Scheer. He lost the popular vote to Erin O'Toole. So the pump was primed for a change election around Justin Trudeau's leadership. And Pierre Poilievre had assembled the Conservative Party. He has been one of the most successful Conservative leaders that we've ever had in terms of fundraising, candidate recruitment, support in the polls, solidarity of the caucus in the Parliament of Canada, effectiveness in Parliament as opposition leader. And then the ballot question changed overnight because Donald Trump has declared economic war on Canada, belittles our country, says that we don't have a right to exist, and is threatening outright annexation. Well, now that's the more important topic than the carbon tax, isn't it? Right? And so everything has level reset. And also, when you have when Justin Trudeau goes, I talk to a lot of my Conservative friends who are candidates in this election campaign, and they say a lot of Liberals who are kind of meek and resigned to the fact that Justin Trudeau was going to lose. Now that Mark Carney is there, they feel that they've got the spring in their step back, and they can be more vocal and outwardly proud about being Liberal again. And then on top of that, by the way, it's the 1-2 combo for the Liberal side, right? Which is the complete collapse of the New Democrats. I mean, Jagmeet Singh is a joke. He's not a serious leader. He doesn't present himself well. He doesn't present an argument, and he's not a serious leader in serious times. And so you have, it has been to the cringing frustration of most New Democrats through the sweep of our history that Liberals in the final 2 weeks of a campaign say to the voters, I know you might vote New Democrat, but you really don't want the Conservatives to win. Now they can say, I know you might vote New Democrat, but you really don't want Pierre to win, and you really don't want Donald Trump to win. To which Pierre Poilievre, I think, has a strong and robust counter argument that he has to put in the window, which is he's an experienced parliamentarian. He is tough. Donald Trump doesn't like him, and he has an ability to work and build a coalition of people who can present a pan-Canadian platform that will get resources east and west into global markets. And I think he should embrace the tagline of being a globalist. A globalist is a good thing when you're a Canadian because we create Canadian jobs through world sales. And I don't think he should shy away from that moniker.
I'm not sure globalist is a good word to be thrown around trying to appeal to certain segments of the conservative base right now. I mean, you know, this is
too bad.
But I'm just like, I have no problem with it, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Like the people who think the World Economic Forum is some, you know, insane cabal that plots out how far you can walk from your house. It's laden with conspiracy theories and also, you know, in some circles, some anti-Semitic undertones, right? So, like I take your point, James.
I'm okay with pushing that cohort away from politics altogether, let alone the Conservative Party. But you create Canadian jobs through world sales. That's what we have always done.
Okay, Jordan, I do want to get you on the NDP in a second, but I want to show you this. This was something that was sent to me today by a keen-eyed source. That's a Liberal campaign bus in a garage in Mississauga getting wrapped up. Don't know when it's coming. Didn't come from a Liberal, by the way. Just it's kind of interesting what people see. So that tells us it's coming, Jordan. And to James' point, it looks like the NDP are getting squeezed pretty hard right now. Like some of the seat projections are single digits, low double digits. You know, Jagmeet Singh is struggling to be heard in this battle between Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. Poilievre needs to figure out his footing. What does your party need to do at this moment in the political cycle?
Well, I'm not sure we're going to win James's vote, so.
Well, embrace globalists, you might. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no question the NDP is in a difficult circumstance, but they've been there before, right? And I think that that's really a bit of history that gets a bit lost in the shuffle here. Every time the Liberals elect a new leader, whether that's Stéphane Dion, Michael Ignatieff, Justin Trudeau, they experience a huge bump, almost always at the expense of the NDP. And typically, those bumps don't last very long. So I think that what we're seeing right now is a lot of volatility in the electorate. We're seeing people who are tuning in, they're checking out politics, they're evaluating leaders and parties in a way that they frankly haven't for 2 years. When the election was going to be a referendum on Justin Trudeau, people were pretty baked in. They were just waiting to cast their ballot. Now people are looking at what's on the table. So a lot of New Democrat voters and NDP Liberal switchers are definitely checking Carney out, and I think that that's pretty normal. But Carney, we have to remember, has not yet been tested. We have not seen him in a campaign. We don't know how he's going to perform. If this weekend is any indication, it might not be too hard to get under his skin. And we may see over the course of the campaign, and it's a truism, but there's a reason for that campaigns do matter, that events move, and that there's space now for the NDP also to peel some of those left-leaning voters off the Liberals. In fact, more space, I would argue, than there was under Trudeau, because Carney has made some declarations that put him firmly back in the center or to the right, if you know, depending on who you talk to. But he's talked about, for example, scrapping capital gains. So that's a big tax giveaway.
Not scrapping capital gains, the increased inclusion rate.
The increase in the inclusion rate, which is a big giveaway to the very wealthiest Canadians. He's talked about limiting the size of government spending, cutting back on the public service. All of these are things that are going to give the New Democrats some space to go to voters who are on the left and who are progressive and say, hey, this is not Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party. And over the course of the campaign, they're going to need to make their case. But I think especially in these fights where jobs are at stake, where communities are at stake, and where the services that Canadians rely on are at stake, there is always a place for New Democrats in those debates. And we know that Singh is also a very experienced campaigner. This is his third national campaign. The same can't be said for the other leaders.
No.
And he is a good campaigner. And so I think we're going to see movement in those numbers over the course of the race.
Okay, Cheryl, how do you see it? Because he is getting squeezed in this moment. And who knows, these polls could all change. But, you know, they also may coalesce. I mean, how do you view the situation?
Well, yeah, they might coalesce, they might change. That's the thing, as Jordan said, campaigns absolutely matter. Mark Carney is untested as a politician, just like not just as a party leader, but as a politician. So we don't know what kind of politician he's going to be. You know, going out and you know, garnering votes for Liberals who were probably already very well primed to vote for you in terms of the leadership race, given that his name has been bandied about in Liberal circles as, you know, a potential successor to Justin Trudeau for years. That's a very different story than having to go to the general electorate, especially when, you know, you have your first few, you know, days or, you know, couple weeks if you go by the time the election is called in office, and you haven't necessarily made the best impression There are people who are going to be looking for certain things. And if they do things like, okay, we're looking at your cabinet and what did you do there? Oh, we don't have a minister for women and gender equality. Those are the types of things that are going to kind of twig people and go, oh, is this the kind of person that I want to be leading the country? Is this where I want to park my vote if you are a certain type of progressive? Liberals have been historically able to gather those people and hive them off from the NDP. But, depending on what type of platform he puts out, what kind of campaign he runs, there is a lot of space that we're hearing that, people are still waiting to see what kind of person, what kind of leader, what kind of prime minister is Mark Carney going to be, and is this somebody we want to see going forward? Canadians vote people out all the time. We are in a different situation because there is a new leader and they have an option of, okay, maybe we'll just run with this. But, over the next few weeks, there's a lot of room for mistakes to be made or gains to be made.
Okay, Amanda, we're going to give you the last word because the Foreign Affairs Minister, Melanie Joly, has just come into the studio and she's going to join us in just a sec. But Amanda, your thoughts on how do you avoid having this momentum as the Liberals splinter apart? I've seen Conservatives pointing to the testy exchange between Prime Minister Carney and some reporters when he was in London. If he had been eating an apple, perhaps it wouldn't have been seen as testy. This is what happens in campaigns. I don't know. I mean, how do you? What's your big concern right now about a relatively inexperienced campaigner in Mark Carney?
Well, I think that the trend is our friend, as they say, and the trend of the polls is obviously looking really favorable to the Liberals. And this is something that nobody, not one of us, would have predicted just a few months ago. Nope. So to be in this place, I can't tell you that I'm very alarmed at this moment or I'm very worried about anything. I think that what he's bringing to the table is something that's resonating with Canadians. And there's a reason why we got here. And that reason is because of the supremely excellent communication strategy of the Conservative Party. For almost 2 years, they shoved down Canadians' throats that the problem with the country, the reason why it was quote unquote broken, was because of Justin Trudeau and the carbon tax. They did such a good job of that communication that they actually eliminated those two variables. They did such a good job that they eliminated them too early before they got to the polls. And it was like they didn't have a plan B. They didn't have something to roll back on. And so now you're seeing we're waiting for the recalibration. We're waiting for the big pivot, and we haven't seen it yet. So while the Liberals are going to talk about their core values, building the economy and dealing with Trump, I think the Conservatives are still trying to play catch up on what the message is now that they've eliminated the very thing that they've been quote unquote campaigning on for the last 2 years.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's been a remarkable change in the polls, and it's remarkable to see the Liberals celebrating saving Canadians from the damage of the carbon tax after telling us the carbon tax was the only thing that would save us from climate change. But here we are. A lot changes in a few months. We're going to leave it there. Amanda Alvaro, James Moore, Jordan Likeness, and Sherelle Evelyn.